This is Andy,
And this is Ben.
and we put America
America first.
All right, welcome to today's show. It's been a little while. In light of everything that's been going on, I'm sure everyone's well aware there have been multiple police shootings, cops shooting people, people shooting cops, random black people shooting random white people on the street.
It's going off
getting
the
out of hand.
fucking chain. It's insane. These people have lost their minds.
Now, I think what a lot of people are doing are focusing on what's going on right now. Let's start a few hundred years ago, 400 or 500 years ago. You're an academic. I think you're a really intelligent person. That's why I wanted to have you on the show.
Well, that's a mistake. I've tricked you into thinking that.
You've done a good job fooling me.
Excellent.
Give us your opinion. Where did this all start based on what you've read? What are we looking at? We're looking at symptoms now of something that started many hundreds of years ago. What happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago?
Hundreds of years ago, there were groups of Africans roaming the plains with an entrenched system of slavery based off of criminality and various other offenses. If you pissed off the king or any tribal leader, you ended up becoming a slave. And ultimately, you would get sold to foreign entities, and that could be other Africans and other African tribes, or it could be Europeans, or at one point, Americans. It could even be Middle Eastern persons. The Muslims were regular purchasers of slaves. Everyone in the world at this time participated in the slave trade. Well, a couple hundred years ago, some white people found out there's a great trade to go and purchase, bring them over and bring them in as farm equipment to this new continent where we need lots and lots and lots of agriculture to bring up food and to pick cotton, pick corn. Fuck, I lost it. Hold on.
Well, let me just. I know it's easy to get mixed up in a lot. You have so much to cover. There's a myth, I think, that's been perpetuated that whites pretty much came over to this peaceful whites. I know it's easy to get mixed up in a lot. You have so much to cover. There's a myth, I think, that's been perpetuated that whites pretty much came over to this peaceful Europeans have come over to this peaceful continent where blacks are in harmony with Mother Nature, and they're at peace, and they're dancing around a fire and beating on drums, and everyone's happy, and no one's murdering each other, raping each other, enslaving each other, because blacks wouldn't do that to each other because they're good people. And the whites come in, and of course they're drunks. They abuse their wives. They're always horrible people. And they throw nets on the blacks who are unsuspecting victims. They haul them through the jungle. They put them on slave ships. They beat them. They're packed in there like sardines for a 3-month voyage. So that's not the reality. It sounds like the reality.
So really, thousands of years ago is when this all started in the dawn of man's written history, and probably before that. In ancient Sumeria, in Chalcolithic age man, there's evidence of a slave trade. The first empire that the earth ever knew, you would call the Nubian Empire. And really, you could argue that Egypt was older, but there's not a lot of evidence as to which came specifically first. But the first evidence of writing we ever have in cuneiform tablets are inventories. And based off of contextual clues, the depictions of human beings, it's inventories of trade between two civilizations, the Nubians and the Egyptians. And guess what they were trading? Human beings, human chattel. They were trading slavery. So slavery started in Africa way before we even had a written history to record it. And part of our writing system was developed specifically to record the exchange of goods, which included slaves. Now, I'm not going to say that we didn't have other things. It was far more important that we traded barley and wheat and copper and different kinds of stone, onyx, all sorts of different things. But slavery was a huge part of it because manpower is important to any burgeoning civilization. So
let me ask you something, or let me throw this in there. So say Europeans have come to Africa and they're looking for slaves, people to buy, and you're an African tribal leader or a king, and you have the resources of thousands of warriors that could overwhelm one ship or 2 or 3 or 10 ships worth of sailors. why would you, if you know, it just blows a hole in this myth that Europeans came to Africa and just started grabbing people. If these
Well,
people were valuable citizens to this culture in Africa, they would have fought back and killed the slave traders.
there's absolutely no question that the people that were being sold off as slaves were not the highest valued persons in society. The people that became slaves were criminals. They were idiots, crazy people, murderers, rapists, thieves. I mean, and it could be as innocent as you stole a loaf of bread from the wrong guy and he got you sold into slavery, or you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe you
Sure.
slept with somebody's wife. Who knows? Things that are, to us in modern era, fairly innocent back then. That's capital crime. And then
Okay,
got you made into a
that hits
slave.
on something I think is important to get us into modern day because we could talk about ancient stuff, and that's very interesting. But who was brought to the United States?
The
Bas-
biggest,
the
the
biggest.
dumbest, and the most aggressive.
Who could push a plow or pick up big bales of cotton or whatever it is they were going to do on the farm. I'm sure they weren't looking for brilliant people because, well, they're there for labor. They don't want you that smart. They
You don't
want you. Yeah, they
you
want
don't
you there
buy
to do
farm
work.
equipment to do your taxes. You hire a lawyer to do your taxes. And you don't buy lawyers from Africa. You buy them from Oxford, England, where they are trained to be lawyers. You buy them from France, where you've got, generations of this history of philosophy. You buy them from Italy, maybe, where you've got these great Renaissance historians and scientists and a history of that kind of culture behind it. When you go to Africa, you buy big apes that can push shit and run around a lot, and they don't burn in the sun because you're going to be working them in the sun. And
Well,
man, what a great piece of equipment, because you just feed it some food and you house it, and it's not that expensive. The machines of the era were hugely expensive. And when it first started, when slavery was first coming to America, and mind you, the first slaves in America were white people. When slavery was first beginning, the machines were either non-existent for most of the practices, or if they did exist, they were exceptionally expensive beyond. It'd be more like buying a mansion to purchase a machine than it is to buy like a car for us today.
well, people I think don't even look at it from a biological, like evolutionary point of view. If you look at, and it makes total sense when you do look at it. So people wanted strong. Okay, how does someone get big and strong as a man? He has a lot of testosterone.
Sure.
That's what builds masculine features: big bone structure, big muscles, athletic people, strong people. Tied to that is higher levels of aggression. So that's part of being a man. Men are more willing to fight. They're bigger. They're built for survival and overcoming animals and climate and things like that. Women aren't. So you've basically brought people over that are already inclined to that. Now we bred them with one another in the new world.
And beyond that, you're specifically breeding to enhance certain traits. You don't breed just two random people together and say, I hope that they produce a good piece of equipment afterwards. You select the biggest and the strongest, the one that's the meanest and can pull the most, more than your horse, and he punches that donkey in the face, the donkey's going to drop. You breed him with the biggest woman available, or you take the prettiest girl and you breed her with the most prolific breeder of your group, and that way you've got some extra slaves to sell on the market. They may not be productive, but you can make them pretty and sell them off to people that want them for other sexual reasons.
So over a period of hundreds of years, slave owners selectively bred the biggest, baddest blacks that they had. And if you look at today, who's in the NFL by and large, who's in the NBA by and large, who's
Absolutely.
in track in the Olympics by and large, blacks. Is it racist to say that, or is this just we're just admitting a fact that this race has been brought to this point where they're, you could say, physically superior to other races?
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely have more fast twitch muscle, which is an important distinction between various other kinds of muscle. And there's I think 5 or 6 different kinds of muscle fibers, and blacks have the ones that are the most athletic. They absorb oxygen and produce a power more efficiently than basically any other race. But unfortunately for them, at least, and this is also more akin to blacks in America too. And you have to remember that there is a distinction between African persons and African American persons. In Africa, that culture just didn't breed the same type of person. And on top of that, they are extremely aggressive over there, but they're not as massive or as athletic as they are in America. Part of it is a nutritional and environmental factor. There's a lot going on there. So they're slightly different in the manners in which they were trained and produced. But here in America, they've produced big, dumb, grunting idiots that they don't have analytical intelligence. Their ability to critically think, it's all subpar. Yeah, their physical abilities are off the charts. That's why they win in sports. But when it comes to thinking and ruling, they're terrible at it.
Now, the liberal, I guess, viewpoint that gets put out there by media education is blacks, they get arrested more often because the system is just out to get blacks. The system is racist. They are convicted of crime more often because juries are racist, judges are racist, prosecutors, everyone, it's all racism. Now, if we look at it from a realistic point, like an objective, hey, here's history. We've selectively bred people to be aggressive, bigger, stronger, faster individuals because they go hand in hand. You're not going to be bigger, faster, stronger if you don't have elevated testosterone levels. If we haven't played, I wouldn't say played with genetics. We're not engineering them, but we're breeding their genetics to go into a certain way where the people we want, people with high testosterone levels, are what we're going to get, are going to give us the qualities that we're looking for. Doesn't it make more sense to say that, well, they just have elevated testosterone levels? It's in their genetics, so they are not as patient or thoughtful about the future. They're more what's the word I'm looking for? And not
immediate.
Aggressive. Yeah, they basically can't control themselves as well. Like
impulsive.
Yeah, impulsivity is much higher. You notice they're quick to get into. If you ever watch, I'm sure you have, videos, they just can't seem to back down with one another or other people. They just keep going. Like some people say, okay, this is going to get out of hand. I don't want to get into a fight. A lot of this is a
self-perpetuating culture and a culture of self-deception and of aggression. Their whole culture is built around very basic tribal kind of instincts. And that's part of why it bleeds into white societies, because it's this base kind of machismo type thing. I mean, and, let's all face it, we all love going to the gym, pumping iron, and looking like, big monsters and, being really strong and hardcore, and everybody loves that shit. And we love watching guys smack the shit out of each other when they're boxing. But in a white society, these things are contained within constructs like sports, or constructs like martial arts, or weightlifting, things that are constructive for the rest of society. And in fact, ultimately, they provide value. But in black society, it's more about just your attitude and your general lifestyle. Now, I have some statistics. Yeah, thug life all the way. I have some statistics that are really fun, specifically relating to this. So in regards to the whole that the system is biased against black people versus white people, in 2014, the FBI produced what is referred to as Table 43. And that is a summarization of all arrests across the entire nation from previous years. Specifically, this table that I'm referencing is from 2014. Now, in 2014, 69.4% of all individuals arrested for all crimes were white. Only 27.8% of persons that were arrested were black. So immediately you can just dispel the bullshit rumor, the idea, the myth that there is a systemic slant against the black man. But here's where it gets really interesting, and specifically to California. In 2013, per 100,000 offenders, blacks were 5.35% or 5.35 times more likely to commit a violent crime. And that's across all violent crimes. So in a population of 100,000 persons who were arrested and their race was presented, 204 of which would be white for all violent crimes. In all of those 100,000 that were black, or of all those 100,000 persons arrested where their race was presented, 1,093 would be black. So basically it's just called 5 times more likely to commit a violent offense. They are 4 times more likely to commit a property offense. And here's the real kicker. I really expected this to be closer because it's California that was reporting these statistics to the DOJ and to FBI. But black people are 6 times more likely to commit a rape in 2013 than anyone else. Fucking where the fuck is the slant in this shit?
Where is the media reporting on? Like, this should be, hey everybody, we need to do something about the black crime problem. No, it's just a cop sometimes, and that's another thing. Say the last 5 or 6 of these really big shooting stories, the cops have been exonerated. I can't recall one where they've actually been prosecuted for murder and it's stuck. Like, once the facts come out, everyone's interviewed, all the ballistics testing have been done, all the experts have been given their opinions. It's not guilty. Once we've actually gotten to look at what's actually happened. Granted, the one in what is it, Minneapolis that just happened, or Minnesota?
Baton Rouge?
Not the Baton Rouge. I think the Baton Rouge one is going to come out as justified. I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely.
The other one where the guy was shot in his car, he had a concealed handgun license.
Yeah.
He's been employed for the last 10 years or so. He was with his girlfriend and child. I think that was probably a huge mistake, misunderstanding, just stupidity on the officer's part. Sometimes it is just flat out a screw up. I think that one probably was. But the vast majority of the time, the media just jumps to attack the officer without actually looking at any evidence before, there's been a trial, before due process has occurred. They just want to slam cops. And now you have people thinking that, God, cops are just killing everybody. They're killing all the blacks. No, they're not. But
no,
the media
they're
makes
really
it look
not
like that.
And what's really aggravating about this is the idea that the police are out there running amok without any kind of supervision or accountability. If you talk to people who are alive in the 1970s, and not just focus on millennials who have no fucking clue what they're talking about, if you talk to people from the 1970s, especially if you talk to police officers who were alive back then, they could get away with whatever the fuck they wanted. If you wanted to kill a black guy on the side of the road, you were fine just doing it. And no one was going to question it. Number one, because, well, hey, he was fucking black. Let's just shoot him in the face. We're all better off without him. And number two, there's no electronic devices recording your ass 24/7 as a police officer. Nowadays, every blessed one of them has a body cam. And if they don't have a body cam, guarantee somebody in the crowd around them is going to have a video camera pointed right at them in a cell phone. So there's 100%, 1,000 times more accountability from police officers for their screw-ups than there ever has been. And the fact is, like Milo Yiannopoulos, I think is his name, that guy talks about how there is no more to really argue about. There's nothing left to fight against because there's no real racism, not like there used to be. And now so they focus on microaggression bullshit, and when something even remotely looks like racism, they blow it way out of proportion.
Well, they
get rioting.
They have to keep the myth. Well, it wasn't a myth 50 years ago, but they have to keep a myth alive now that the entire system and all white people are racist and trying to hold blacks down, because there's no other, well, other than the truth, there's no other reason why blacks are failing in academics. They're failing to become economically successful. They need an excuse. Hey, blacks, why don't we just look at history? You guys have been selectively bred to be big and dumb and stupid. Sorry. That's where we're, like, whether or not you like the truth is where you got to start from, or you're just going to be swimming in circles forever. And
recovery only occurs after admission. I mean, you have to accept the fact. When you're stuck in denial.
If you were an alcoholic and I kept telling you, hey man, you know what? It's your damn neighbors. They're the problem. Or hey, your parents, they didn't give you enough attention when you were a kid.
They didn't hug you.
No, it's just that you're a fucking alcoholic and you need to lay off the bottle. And until we address what the actual problem is, It's never going to get fixed. But what really is there to fix? Like, if you have an entire race of people that are genetically predisposed to being more violent,
and
what are
more
we going to do?
ignorant.
We're going to deport them all. These people are American citizens. I don't think we can really just put them all on a boat and ship them to Africa. I don't think that's going to happen. But what we could do is say
there were movements for that all throughout American history. In fact, right after Lincoln emancipated them, he was all about sending them back. Unfortunately, he didn't do so because he knew that it would set a negative precedent. And he wanted specifically to set the example of equality amongst all men, blah, 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 even though everyone knows he didn't believe that shit.
Okay, this is a funny thing I heard on the radio today. There was a black caller that called in and said, maybe we just need to have blacks policing blacks. And I was thinking, you mean segregation? That thing that was probably working pretty well for a while? Yeah, okay, that's probably a step in the right direction, because then they couldn't blame white people for everything.
Exactly right. When segregation was a thing, even when separate but equal was a thing, they couldn't pull themselves up to the level that the whites could. And that's ultimately what it is. You spoke to it yourself. You talked about passing through a neighborhood that was predominantly black, and what did you find there?
Oh, okay, yeah. So we talked earlier. I said, I take a shortcut through a minority neighborhood. There's a lot of blacks and Mexicans there. What do I see there? Besides the public school that the taxpayers pay for from rich neighborhoods, I saw a chicken shack.
Of course you
did. So a chicken shack, a bar, a used car lot, and a place that sells rims and does stupid, retarded car mods. That's it. So this is what sells in that community. Oh, and a liquor store. I don't know if I mentioned that. Liquor during the day, liquor during the night.
That's
and
awesome.
Used cars that are probably like you're gonna pay out the ass on your interest rate because you have shitty credit score because you're a minority.
Buy that shit on credit. Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Do it.
So
and don't pay.
And then once you have that shitty car, you go across the street and you put expensive rims on it that are worth as much as a car.
Yes.
This is shitty planning. This is stupidity. These are. But why would you open anything else up in this neighborhood?
You wouldn't.
It's not going to do. No.
You absolutely wouldn't. Those things will do exceptionally well.
So, is there any law that says, you minorities, us white folk are telling you this is all you can have in your neighborhood?
Nope.
You can't have a regular restaurant, or you can't have a woodworking shop, or any other thing that would draw people into the community. That's why these communities never advance. Because when there's crime in a community, when people are violent and criminal, you're not going to open up a decent restaurant there. It's just going to get robbed. People aren't going to come to it. It's not going to do well. So there's no investment in the inner cities or code word places where all the minorities live because they're too aggressive. They cause too much crime, and no one wants to invest in a place full of crime.
And what's interesting is when you see gentrification happen. When gentrification occurs and you finally get some nice businesses that come into downtown wherever, and they start pushing out all of the nasty shit that's hanging around there, guess what? The store owners start calling the cops. And instead of just ignoring the little beat that they've been running around for 20 years, now the cops have to do a job because somebody's running their mouth. And so Johnny the hobo can't be sucking dick on the side of the road for crack anymore. He's got to go wrap it up and go hide under a bridge or get arrested. And eventually you get these conflicts between the minority, lower class persons and these new gentrified areas. And so they get upset because finally they've gotten something good in their neighborhood, but they're fucking ruining it because they're bad people. And it just takes everything that they wanted and it shows them that they can't have nice things because they're not nice people. They're bad people, and ultimately that's what fucks them up. It's really fun looking at the studies from sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, they have in sub-Saharan Africa there's an average IQ of 82. That's phenomenal. I mean that is lower than median average. I mean
that's below a standard deviation. So that's like gosh, what is that? It's like 75% of white people are smarter than the average sub-Saharan African.
Yep, and that's where they come from. This is phenomenal. I mean, it tells you everything you need to know. People don't like talking about the bell curve, but that was probably the first real modern look at what was to be defined as racial intelligence quotients or racial, what do they call it? Racial Q quotients.
Hey,
And
I don't want to go off on, because we've talked about that on a number of episodes already. I want
sure.
to talk about what are the options are we looking at? Say if you were king for a day, or maybe not king. Say you were president, and you could say, "Hey, America, we have these three options. We can blacks, you want your own country where no one's going to be racist to you. We're going to subsidize. We'll give you all a ticket. We'll give you a piece of land in Liberia that the taxpayer is going to pay for. You're going to start fresh in your own country. No one to blame for failure but you."
Yep.
That's option one. Option two, we're going to acknowledge that you are not just like everyone else. You are more aggressive. You do have inalienable rights. You're still human beings. But you cannot blame us for racism. There's going to be no affirmative action. Your community is going to have to stand on its own or fail on its own. And you're just going to, wherever the chips fall, that's where they fall. Is there an option three after that? Because the option that we're having right now is, let's ignore reality, let's blame white people and cause racial division, and when we don't look it in the face for what it is, and we keep making excuses, we don't really address any of the problems. If you look at Chicago, 30, 40 people get shot every weekend. Every weekend.
Yep.
Well, why don't we... I mean, if we really care about blacks, if blacks really care about blacks, or the liberal whites want to do something to help the black community, why don't they just tell the truth? You guys are really violent. It's in your DNA, literally. And we need to do something to fix that, to mitigate it. Maybe we need separate... plus, how often do blacks murder, rape, rob people from other ethnicities? So, like... Not only are they causing hell for themselves, they're causing hell for everyone around them. Maybe we should put you in your own community. Like that black girl that called into the radio said, maybe we should just have our own police force. Oh, so you basically mean segregated police forces for your community. Okay, I agree with that. And you guys take care of your own problems and don't blame anyone else. But until they take care of their own problems, it's going to keep happening. And if they want 30 people shot every weekend and to do nothing about it, that's what they're going to get. And I think 100 years ago they didn't have all these crazy violent problems. I think blacks probably by and large can raise blacks. The problem is today they have no incentive to do it because the government has incentivized them to be single moms, to be on welfare, to fuck around, to have a bunch of kids from different men, to get Section 8 housing, to get food stamps. There is no reason to have a strong family unit whatsoever. There's a lot of economic reasons, and economic reasons are really strong reasons in life. Everywhere we've moved to, the education we get, the choices we make are pretty much all economic. Now,
I don't argue that one bit. Yeah,
if we can remove that and force the black community to stay together, to not fuck around and have 7 or 8 kids on welfare, maybe the black community can finally start healing and taking care of itself. Because I don't think all black people are bad people. I think black people do have problems, for sure. More problems than most other races. But at the same time, they can overcome. They just need to get all these lies and government subsidies out of there, and then they'll be forced to overcome. You know what I mean?
I absolutely agree with you, and I completely understand where you're coming from. I don't hate all blacks either. It is irritating and frustrating. It's deeply maddening that as a white person, when I see statistics like blacks, the choice of victims by black violent offenders between 2012 and 2013, they choose white victims 40% of the time. Whites choose whites 82.4% of the time. Hispanics choose whites 38% of the time. The fact of the matter is that they prey on us. But then when we return fire, when we finally ball up and we start fucking them up, we're the assholes for it. That is maddening to me. if we're going to be equal, and in America, we're meant to be equal, this is supposed to be the one place in the entire world where two people, regardless of their backgrounds, can fuck each other up for proper reasons, of course. You can't just go out and just punch someone in the face. It's beyond, societal backing. But if someone calls you a bad name and you punch them in the mouth, that should be completely acceptable. I mean, and these days, if a white person punches a black guy, well, he's a racist no matter what. Can't say anything. The black guy was in the right. Black guy kills a white dude, and it's business as usual. It's fine. It's protected act, and it's normal. You can persecute white people for any number of crimes that you can't persecute any other minority for, and that shit needs to stop. Remove the protections and the special treatment, and they will grow and be better for it, because they'll have to learn how to become human beings again. When they get to feeling like there will be no retaliation, then they can do whatever they want. They can act as dumb as they want. When they're economically supported and there's no retaliation to their bank account, because they're not going to go to jail for fighting some white guy in the middle of the ghetto, the white guy's probably at fault anyways, then they don't give a shit. They can act as dumb as they want to. And already their lives are terrible. Most of these people live in bedlam and squalor. And the ones that don't, they sing rap songs about living in bedlam and squalor, and they perpetuate their own shitty culture. There's nothing good about being a thug ghetto person, but that is what is personified as the best of their culture. Is just impoverished, sad, mad at everything, hate white people for they don't even know what fucking reason. Their great-great-great-grandpa was a slave. Well, fuck the white man because of it forever. And that's maddening. I cannot stand it.
Well, I think that's as good a place as any to wrap up our show for today. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I hope you've. I hope this inspires you to do some thinking, and because we have to go somewhere eventually. We can't do the same thing and accept the same crap. We have to start calling a spade, and if you're in discussion with your friends, family, call your local radio station, whatever. Don't be afraid to tell the truth about race and intelligence and predisposition and genetics. This is science. I mean, we backed up. We didn't cite everything that we talked about, but we mentioned some studies and books and things like that. They're all true. You can look them up online yourself. But until people can feel comfortable talking about